On to the day's other top story. The remaining suspect in a mass stabbing in Canada has died as a result of self-inflicted injuries. Myles Sanderson had been on the run but was arrested near Rosthern in Saskatchewan. 10 people were killed and at least 18 injured on Sunday. Victoria Gatenby reports.
A manhunt lasting 3 days and stretching over 3 vast prairie provinces ended on the side of a road in Saskatchewan. Myles Sanderson was arrested on suspicion of mass murder, but later died from self-inflicted injuries.
He was the only occupant of the vehicle when he was arrested. Shortly after being arrested, he went into medical distress. Emergency medical services responded, and he was transported to hospital in Saskatoon, and that's where he was deceased.
Sanderson's brother, who was also a suspect, was found dead on Monday near the scene of the crimes. 10 people were stabbed to death in the James Smith Cree Reserve in Saskatchewan on Sunday. It's one of the worst mass murders in Canadian history. Mark Arcard's sister was killed as she shielded her children.
Right outside of her home. She was killed by senseless acts. Her son, she was protecting her son. She was protecting these 3 little boys. This is why she's a hero.
In addition to the 10 people stabbed to death, 18 people were injured. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has promised additional resources for the traumatised community. Local leaders say people are struggling to come to terms with the attack.
We are probably one of the most resilient races on the planet, but we have our breaking points. You know, my feelings as an Indigenous person is that it's just more trauma layered on top of what the community already lives with, intergenerational trauma, mental health.
Sanderson was wanted for breaching parole in May. He'd served part of a sentence for assault and robbery. Police in Saskatchewan are facing questions about why it took 4 months to find him. They say the motive for the brutal attacks remains unknown. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
Well, let's bring in Christopher Olcorn. He's a reporter at Western Standard, an online news and opinion platform focusing on Western Canada. Been following the story and joins us from Regina. Good to have you with us again on the programme, Christopher. I mean, the police in the last few hours have given a very detailed, methodical account of what happened and when, just to allay any suspicion around the circumstances to this latest part of the story. What do you make of what's been said and the issues around the arrest?
Well, they did have a press conference that started about an hour ago where the head of the RCMP did clearly lay out what had happened throughout today from the report of the pickup truck being stolen about 2:10 local time. At 3:30, they forced that pickup truck off the road and were able to arrest Myles Sanderson at that time. Now, there is one photo, which we have up on our site, of Myles standing with handcuffs on and several police officers around him. At that moment in time, he does not look to be in any sort of medical distress. One eyewitness on the scene who was driving by in a pickup truck actually said Myles was smiling and laughing and seemed to like the attention that he was getting, which an individual like him that would go and do this, who knows what's actually going on inside his head. Shortly after that was when he went into what they called medical distress and went by ambulance to Saskatoon, which is the nearest big city, to the Royal University Hospital, escorted by police cars, obviously, and he passed away at some point. We're not sure it was in the ambulance or when he arrived at the hospital. But they did find a knife in the vehicle.
And of course, the police saying that there will be an independent inquiry now into how he died and the circumstances around that. We will have to wait and see. At the moment, you know, you've been following the story for the past few days, and we got a small glimpse in Victoria's report about the reaction that the community is dealing with. I mean, what's your sense of how devastated this particular community have been in the light of what's happened these past 4 or 5 days?
Tremendous. Most are actually not on the James Smith Cree Nation right now. They're in hotels in Saskatoon, basically because most of the James Smith Cree Nation is a crime scene. The clip you played just earlier there from was about the Burns family. They can't go to their house because the inside of their house is even a crime scene. So there was a ton of violence that happened. There's 13 different crime scenes, 12 of which are actually on the James Smith Cree Nation, and one is in a neighboring village called Weldon, Saskatchewan. The police have a ton of work ahead of them to sort through everything that happened. Not only that, the 4-day manhunt that took them all over Saskatchewan, trying to find this individual as well.
And Christopher, just briefly, I mean, this community has really lurched from one disaster to another. It's a deprived community generally thought of. It's dealing with a shooting only, a year ago that left 2 dead in 2016. They had an oil pipeline spill that contaminated their main water supply. They're also part of the whole historic abuse case revealed and blamed on the Catholic Church's residential schools. They have a huge drug problem, huge unemployment. This community just can't seem to get a break. And the Prime Minister and the government really have to focus on not just this community, but communities like them across Canada.
Yes, and actually, one of the head of the chiefs of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations actually said he hopes that this actually shines a spotlight on the drug and alcohol problems that they do have so that they can get more supports for that. And he actually said, if anything good comes out of it, that could be something that actually comes good out of this horrific tragedy. We've never had a mass killing and rampage like this before in Canada. And this was done with a knife, not a gun, as well.
Indeed,
which
tragic circumstances.
Even more questions.
Indeed, more questions and more investigation. We'll come back to you, I'm sure, as the day and as the weeks progress for more insight. For the moment, Christopher Aldcorn, thanks for joining us from Regina.
Thank you.